Minecraft, in my humble opinion, is a wonderful tool for telling stories. In fact, you are telling stories every time you're playing this game. Stories about your adventures through these beautiful worlds. Stories in which you are the main character. But what is a main character without an additional cast? Personally, I like to spruce up my worlds by creating cities and villages. Now sure, you can just build your house, place in your bed, your chest, your furnace, and it works. Everyone will recognize it as a house, but it lacks character. When I design a house, I like to picture the people that come to live there. I like to imagine who they are and what they do and then carry those ideas through into the entire design. And if you do that, suddenly your house has a purpose, a reason for being there. And today, I'd like to take you through the process that I go through when building in Minecraft. And who knows, maybe we'll meet someone interesting along the way. First up is character. Before we do anything, we need to know who we are doing it for. Who is going to live here and what do they do? Your character can of course be anyone, a noble knight, a king, a billionaire in a fancy suit, a superhero in a fancy suit, or, and this is the example I'll be using in this video, a baker. And now that we have a character in mind, we need to get into their minds a little bit. Who are they? What do they do? In our case, it's a baker. I imagine he bakes things, and I can already taste the pastries that I'm picturing. But then again, what does the baker do with those pastries? Does he eat them himself? Does he give them away from the kindness of his heart? Or does he sell them? If so, he'll probably need a little shop. What does our character like and dislike? Is the glass half full or half empty? These are all very important questions. So take a little bit of time to figure them out before we move on to the next step. Maybe you can think it through overnight because it does seem to be getting a little bit dark now. Our next step is exterior. Once you've gotten to know your character a little bit better, you'll have a pretty good idea of what their house should look like. As in, the things that need to go inside the house. The baker, in my example, will definitely need a place to practice his craft. Maybe just a quaint little bakery, which then of course should include a place where he can actually bake his goods. A place where he has an oven, a big oven. So now he has an area where he bakes them and an area where he sells them. And don't worry, they will be connected later on. Hold on tight. And then of course he will be needing a place where he actually lives. A place all for himself, where he can spend his free time and relax and, go to bed, that sort of stuff. Now, as you can see, we now have a couple of very basic shapes, and they will be important in just a little bit. First, we need to figure out what style we want to build in. And style can depend on a lot of factors. And those factors include, but are not limited to, location, the feel you want for your build, like if for example you want something a little more naturey, and yes, I did struggle to come up with a better example, and of course a time frame for when your story takes place. If your story for example takes place in the early 1600s, it's kind of weird to build a modern skyscraper for example. Now personally, I associate baking with more of a traditional profession, so I'll be going with something slightly more medieval inspired. However, if your character is a billionaire, then maybe you might choose something more modern, like a rocket for example. Now do you remember these shapes? Now is the time that we get to mess with them a little bit. Try and find a configuration that both looks good but also functions well. And of course they don't all have to be at the ground floor. What I've done here is, this is the area for the little shop. That is the area where he bakes his things, and this upper floor here, that is where he lives. Once you have a configuration that you're happy with, you can start building the house, the exterior, in the style that you've chosen. Ta-da! That is the building. And as you can see, it still lacks some character. And that is because we haven't done the most important bit yet, which is interior. This is where your story starts coming to life. This is where you implement the tiny little details that you've come up with earlier to tell your character's story. Really make it personal and really take your time here. Think back to when you created your character and came up with the things they do. And then think to yourself, well, how can I show that off inside here? The idea is to really go in detail in what your character does or doesn't do. Show what they do through the blocks that make up their house and get creative. You're not limited to just the blocks Minecraft has to offer. Use your imagination. Loom, for example, can be an empty bookshelf. Snow can become the dough that he uses. And a couple of trapdoors can be a barrel. Feel free to sketch outside the lines a little bit. And of course, don't forget the outside. Let's clean this up. Whoa, 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 whoa. Falling and everything. Make sure that there is a proper path leading up to the place. And putting a little clothes line for his... where he dries his clothes. Well, actually, I'm thinking now he probably wouldn't be putting this at the entrance of his shop, would he? As I was saying, put a little clothesline up. It's details like that that makes the house look like it's being lived in. Yeah, that sort of works. Kind of like it's draped all over. This is where he dries his clothes. And this kind of seems important. Let's give this shop a little name. What shall we call it? There you go. Oh, we got an achievement as well. And maybe he farms his own ingredients right here at the back of his shop. Right behind it. Well, of course the backside of the shop would be a CD place. Add a nice little composter for decoration. Maybe fill it up a whole bunch. Wow, these seeds don't really do a lot, do they? Now, I don't really imagine our baker to be much of a gardener. But I'm just going to add something here in a little backyard to make... Maybe he likes to spend a little bit of his time in here. There, something like that. Maybe he's growing berries or something. And now you can see with all these additions around the house, you can see that it's actually feeling like someone's living here. So let me tell you the story of our baker. My baker has a very long day. He gets up in the early hours of the morning to bake fresh bread. He's already working long before he opens up his shop, which probably means that he'll be very tired when he closes his shop for the day. So I've decided that when my baker is done for the day, he likes to settle in a comfortable chair to read a book. And that would pretty much be the daily routine of the baker. And that is the story that this house tells. Thank you very much for watching.